The morning Adanna's heart broke, the sky wept with her. She stood in the doorway of their small hut, holding a crumpled note in trembling hands. Ekenna was gone, not stolen by death or duty, but by choice. He had left her for Chiamaka, the daughter of the wealthy merchant, on the very day they were to announce their engagement. The note was brief, cold, empty of the warmth she knew. Adanna's knees buckled. How could the man who spoke promises under the moon now choose gold over her? The village women whispered outside, their voices sharp with gossip and pity, but Adanna heard none of it. Her eyes fell on the small glass bottle sitting alone on the wooden shelf, his sandalwood perfume, the scent he wore every day, the smell that lingered on her skin after their embraces. He had left it behind. In her grief, she reached for it, clutching the bottle like a drowning woman clutches driftwood. It was all she had left of him now. The village could not stop talking about Ekenna's betrayal. By evening, the story had grown legs and walked through every compound. The elders shook their heads. The young men laughed nervously, wondering if they too could be swayed by wealth. But it was the women who understood something darker was at play. Chiamaka was not just wealthy. She was known for her pride, her envy, her cruel tongue. She had watched Adanna and Ekenna's love grow for years, her eyes always narrowed with resentment. Why would a man as honest as Ekenna suddenly abandon his humble, beautiful bride for a woman he once called cold? Some whispered that Chiamaka had used dark means. Others said it was simply the power of money. But Adanna knew. Deep in her soul, she knew. Ekenna's eyes in those final weeks had been distant, clouded, as though he were walking through a dream. When she returned to the hut that night, she saw it clearly. Carved into the wooden doorpost was a strange symbol, faint but deliberate, a mark of magic, a mark of interference. Adanna did not sleep that night. By dawn, she had made her decision. She would seek out the one person the village both feared and respected, Mama Azuka, the witch of the white gown. The path to Mama Azuka's dwelling was not kind. It wound through the forest of whispering shadows, where the trees leaned close and the air felt thick with secrets. Adanna walked with her head high, though her heart hammered in her chest. The villagers had warned her. They said Mama Azuka saw things others could not, that she demanded truth as payment, that her magic was not to be trifled with. But Adanna had nothing left to lose. She clutched the perfume bottle in her wrapper, the glass warm against her skin. The forest seemed to watch her, the leaves rustling with unseen whispers. Then, as the sun reached its peak, she saw it. A small hut draped entirely in white cloth, glowing softly in the shadows. The door opened before Adanna could knock, and there she stood, Mama Azuka. Her eyes, ancient and knowing, smiled faintly and said one word, Ekenna. Adanna's breath caught in her throat. How did this woman know his name? Mama Azuka gestured for her to enter. Inside, the hut smelled of herbs, smoke, and something old and sacred. Adanna sat on the woven mat, her hand still clutching the perfume bottle. Mama Azuka poured water into 2 clay cups and watched Adanna carefully. You want to know why he left, the old woman said. It was not a question. Adanna nodded, tears threatening to fall again. Mama Azuka sighed deeply. He did not leave you, child. His soul was taken. She explained that Chiamaka had cast a glamour spell, a powerful enchantment woven with greed and envy. It trapped Ekenna's true self, buried beneath false desires and empty ambitions. His love for Adanna still existed, hidden deep, but the spell clouded his mind and heart. Can you break it? Adanna asked desperately. Mama Azuka shook her head slowly. If I break it directly, the spell will rebound. It will kill him, or worse, trap him forever. But there is another way. She reached for the perfume bottle in Adanna's hands. This scent, Mama Azuka said, is the only thing Ekenna keeps close to his true self. It reminds him of who he was before Chiamaka's greed poisoned him. I have bound your love, your grief, and your determination to this bottle. It will now act as a compass, a map to guide you. She handed the bottle back to Adanna. Follow the scent, child, but know this. The lighter the scent becomes, the deeper the corruption has spread. You must be strong, you must endure, and when the time is right, you must confront her in the place where her pride is strongest. Adanna held the glowing bottle, feeling its warmth spread through her fingers. I will bring him back, she whispered. Mama Azuka nodded. Then go. The path will not wait. Adanna followed the trail of the perfume's glow to the outskirts of the capital city. The scent was strong here, almost overwhelming, but it carried a strange weight. Beneath the familiar warmth of sandalwood was something metallic, something foul, the taint of Chiamaka's influence. Adanna walked through the busy market, the perfume bottle tucked in her wrapper, guiding her steps. Then she saw it. A small stall where a trader was selling traditional farming tools, the kind Ekenna once treasured. Adanna's heart sank. She approached the trader, her voice steady. Where did you get these? The man looked up, his face weary. A strange young man sold them to me 3 days ago. Strange fellow. Laughed the whole time, but his eyes were empty. Said he had no use for old things anymore. Adanna's hands trembled as she touched the worn handles of the tools. These were Ekenna's. He had carved them himself, lovingly, patiently. Now they were sold, discarded like trash. The perfume bottle flickered faintly in her wrapper, as though mourning with her. Adanna paid the trader and took the tools, holding them close. I will save you, Ekenna. Even if you have forgotten yourself, I have not. The trail led Adanna through the forest of lost vows, the sacred place where she and Ekenna had once exchanged promises beneath the old baobab tree. The scent here was faint, ghostly, like a memory fading into mist. Adanna walked slowly, her eyes scanning the trees, her heart heavy with the weight of what had been lost. Then she heard it, the sound of wheels on dirt, the clatter of a lavish carriage. Adanna hid behind the thick roots of the baobab tree as the carriage passed. Through the open window, she saw them, Ekenna and Chiamaka. Chiamaka was draped in silk, her face smug and triumphant. But it was Ekenna who broke Adanna's heart all over again. His face was blank, empty, as though he were a puppet carved from wood. His eyes, once full of life and laughter, stared ahead without seeing. Adanna stepped out from behind the tree, desperate, hopeful. Ekenna, she called. But he did not turn. He did not even flinch. The carriage rolled past, leaving only dust and silence. Adanna fell to her knees, clutching the perfume bottle, weeping. But then she felt it, a faint pulse of warmth from the bottle. He was still in there, somewhere. Adanna followed the scent trail deeper into the capital city, and it led her to the one place she feared most, the palace. The grand gates loomed before her, guarded by stern-faced soldiers. The perfume's glow was weakest here, barely a flicker. It meant Ekenna was closest to Chiamaka and furthest from his true self. Adanna knew she could not enter as herself. She needed a disguise, a way to move unseen. She found a kind woman selling vegetables near the palace kitchens and begged for help. The woman, moved by Adanna's desperation, agreed to sneak her in as a new servant. Adanna tied her hair back, wore plain clothes, and kept her head low. Inside the palace, everything was gold and marble, cold and lifeless. Adanna moved through the halls carefully, the perfume bottle hidden beneath her clothes. Then she saw her, Chiamaka, walking through the grand hall, her head held high, her laughter sharp and mocking. Around her neck was an intricate necklace, shimmering with the same emerald light as the perfume bottle. Adanna's breath caught. That necklace, it was the source, the anchor of the spell. Adanna pressed herself against the stone wall, watching Chiamaka closely. The necklace pulsed faintly with every step Chiamaka took, its light matching the rhythm of the perfume bottle. Adanna strained to hear the conversation. Chiamaka was speaking to another noble woman, her voice dripping with pride and triumph. "The spell is unbreakable," she boasted. "As long as I wear this necklace, his soul is mine. He cannot leave, cannot remember, cannot love anyone but me." The other woman gasped in admiration and envy. Adanna's stomach turned. So this was it. The necklace held the power, the anchor that kept Ekenna trapped. If she could break it, the spell would shatter. But how? Chiamaka never took it off. Adanna moved through the hall, trying to stay invisible. Then she felt it, a brush of warmth against her arm. She turned. Ekenna was standing right beside her, his eyes dull and distant. But for a brief moment, the perfume bottle flickered brightly. Ekenna shivered, a small tremor running through his body. His gaze flickered to Adanna's face, confused, searching. Then Chiamaka's voice called out sharply, "Ekenna, come!" And just like that, he was gone again, walking away like a shadow. Adanna spent the next days working in the palace kitchens, scrubbing pots and serving meals, all while keeping her eyes on Chiamaka and Ekenna. It was exhausting, humiliating work, but Adanna endured. One evening, an older woman working beside her noticed Adanna's sadness. "You look like you have lost something precious," the cook said gently. Adanna hesitated, then decided to trust her. "I have," she whispered. "The man I love was stolen by a spell." The cook's eyes widened. "You mean the young man with the merchant's daughter?" Adanna nodded. The cook sighed deeply. "I knew him before. He was kind, humble, full of laughter. But now he's like a ghost. He wanders the halls at night, looking lost. I have seen him staring at his own reflection, as though he does not recognize himself." Adanna's heart ached. "Is there anything else you know about her? About Chiamaka?" The cook leaned closer, her voice low. "She has one terrible fear. Mirrors. She breaks every mirror she sees. I do not know why, but it terrifies her." Adanna's mind raced. A fear of mirrors. Why? What was Chiamaka hiding from her own reflection? The next morning, Chiamaka summoned Adanna to the main kitchen. She did not know Adanna's true identity, but she was suspicious of all new servants. "You," Chiamaka said coldly, pointing at Adanna, "stir the oil for the feast." Adanna looked at the large pot of boiling oil hanging over the fire. It was a dangerous, painful task. The heat was unbearable. But Adanna nodded and stepped forward. She gripped the long wooden spoon and began to stir, the flames licking at her arms, the heat burning her skin. Chiamaka watched with cruel satisfaction, waiting for Adanna to flinch, to cry out, to feel. But Adanna did not. She focused on the perfume bottle hidden in her wrapper, feeling its warmth against her skin. It pulsed gently, as though giving her strength. She stirred the oil slowly, steadily, her face calm despite the pain. Chiamaka frowned, annoyed. Then, from the corner of the kitchen, Ekenna appeared. He had been walking past, but he stopped when he saw Adanna. For a brief moment, his eyes cleared. He saw her pain, her courage, and something flickered in his face. Pity, guilt, recognition. But then, Chiamaka grabbed his arm and pulled him away. "Come, my love, we have no time for servants." That night, as Adanna lay on the hard floor of the servants' quarters, nursing her burned arms, she felt a familiar presence. The air grew cool and sweet. Mama Azuka appeared in the shadows, her white gown glowing faintly in the darkness. "You have done well, child," the old woman said softly, "but the spell is growing stronger. Chiamaka senses your presence, even if she does not know who you are. We must renew the magic." Mama Azuka took the perfume bottle and held it to the moonlight streaming through the small window. She chanted quietly, then gestured for Adanna to cry into the bottle. "Your tears of love and dedication will strengthen the compass," she said. Adanna wept, not from pain, but from the weight of everything she had endured. Her tears fell into the bottle, mixing with the perfume, and the emerald light flared brightly. Mama Azuka handed it back. The glamour can only be broken in a moment of profound pride and public exposure. Chiamaka must face her true self before the world. Only then will the spell shatter. Adanna nodded, understanding. "Thank you, Mama." The old woman smiled and faded into the shadows. The next day, Adanna was walking through the palace gardens when she felt the perfume bottle surge with heat. She looked up and saw Ekenna standing alone by the fountain, his face twisted with confusion and pain. Adanna approached slowly, her heart pounding. "Ekenna," she whispered. He turned sharply, his eyes widening. For the first time since the spell, he truly saw her. "Ekenna!" His voice was hoarse, desperate. "Is it really you?" She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I am here. I have been here all along." Ekenna stumbled forward and grabbed her arm, his grip tight and frantic. "I am suffocating," he gasped. "I know I am trapped. I feel it every day like chains around my soul, but I cannot break free. I cannot remember why I left you, but I know it was wrong. I know I am lost." Adanna held his hand, her voice breaking. "I will save you. I promise." But then, Ekenna's eyes glazed over again. The glamour reasserted itself, dragging him back under. He released her and stepped back, his face going blank. But before he ran away, he dropped something in her hand, a small silver key. Then he was gone, fleeing into the palace halls like a man haunted. Adanna stared at the silver key in her palm, her mind racing. What did it open? She searched the palace discreetly, asking quiet questions, following faint trails. Finally, a young guard told her about a locked chamber in the east wing, a room Ekenna visited late at night when Chiamaka was asleep. Adanna waited until midnight, then crept through the dark hallways. She found the door, plain and unremarkable, and slid the key into the lock. It turned smoothly. Inside, the room was small and simple, lit only by the moonlight streaming through a narrow window. But what Adanna saw made her heart soar and break at the same time. The room was filled with the gifts and trinkets Ekenna had once given her. The wooden comb he carved, the woven bracelet she made him, the dried flowers from their first meeting. Everything was here, carefully preserved, hidden away from Chiamaka's influence. This was the true heart of the man she loved. This was proof that his soul still belonged to her. Adanna sank to her knees, clutching the items, weeping with relief. He had not forgotten. He had not truly left. He was just trapped, waiting for her to find him. The next morning, the palace was buzzing with activity. Chiamaka had announced a grand royal ceremony to take place the following day. She would formally present Ekenna to the king as her husband, solidifying her claim over him before the entire kingdom. Adanna's blood ran cold. If the ceremony succeeded, the spell would become permanent. She had to act now. The kind cook found Adanna in the kitchens and pulled her aside. "Tomorrow is your only chance," the cook whispered urgently. "Chiamaka has been preparing for days. Her pride is at her peak. She believes nothing can touch her now." Adanna nodded, her mind working quickly. This was it, the moment Mama Azuka had warned her about, a moment of profound pride and public exposure.
Adanna spent the rest of the day observing Chiamaka, watching how she preened and prepared, how she checked her appearance obsessively but refused to look in mirrors. Chiamaka's vanity was her armor, but it was also her weakness. And tomorrow, in front of the king and the entire court, Adanna would use that weakness to shatter the spell and free Ekenna once and for all. The morning of the ceremony arrived with golden sunlight and the scent of incense. The palace throne room was filled with nobles, merchants, and villagers, all gathered to witness Chiamaka's triumph. Adanna stood among the servants at the back of the hall, her heart pounding, the perfume bottle hidden beneath her simple dress. At the front of the hall, Chiamaka stood beside Ekenna, her head held high, the emerald necklace glowing faintly around her neck. Ekenna's face was blank, his eyes distant, his hands limp at his sides. Chiamaka began to speak, her voice loud and confident, declaring her love for Ekenna, her joy at their union. The crowd murmured approvingly. But then, Adanna stepped forward. She walked slowly through the crowd, her head held high, her eyes locked on Chiamaka. She reached the front of the hall and stopped just a few feet from Chiamaka. She pulled the glowing perfume bottle from her dress and held it high. "This woman is a liar," Adanna said clearly. "She has stolen a soul." The throne room fell silent. Chiamaka's face twisted with shock and rage. "Who are you?" she spat. "How dare you interrupt this sacred ceremony?" Adanna did not flinch. "I am Adanna, the woman Ekenna was meant to marry, the woman he truly loves." She turned to the king. "Your Majesty, this woman has used dark magic to trap Ekenna's soul. He did not choose her, he was forced." The crowd gasped. Chiamaka's face turned red with fury. "This is slander, lies, she's jealous and bitter." She turned to the king, her voice desperate. "Your Majesty, this woman is a witch. She is trying to ruin me with false accusations. Execute her for this insult." The king frowned, his eyes moving between Adanna and Chiamaka. "These are serious claims," he said slowly. "Do you have proof, girl?" Adanna held up the perfume bottle, its emerald light pulsing brightly. "This is my proof. This bottle is bound to Ekenna's true self. It has led me here, tracking the corruption of his soul, and I will show you the truth." Chiamaka stepped back, her hand instinctively reaching for the necklace around her neck. Fear flickered in her eyes. Adanna saw it, the crack in her armor. Before Adanna could act, the air in the throne room shifted. A cold wind swept through the hall, extinguishing some of the candles. From the shadows at the back of the room, Mama Azuka appeared, her white gown glowing softly. The crowd gasped and stepped back. Everyone knew who she was. Chiamaka's eyes widened with terror. "You!" she whispered. Mama Azuka walked forward slowly, her ancient eyes fixed on Chiamaka. "You have played with forces you do not understand, child," the old woman said quietly. "You have bound a soul with greed and envy, but every spell has a price, and yours is coming due." Mama Azuka raised her hands and began to chant. The emerald necklace around Chiamaka's neck flickered and dimmed. Chiamaka stumbled, her confidence shaking. For the first time, she felt doubt. The spell she had been so sure of, so proud of, was trembling under Mama Azuka's power. The king leaned forward, his interest piqued. "Prove it," he commanded. "Show me the truth of this accusation." Adanna stepped forward, holding the perfume bottle high. "I will, Your Majesty. Watch closely." Adanna held the perfume bottle above her head and spoke clearly. "Show us the path of his soul." The emerald light flared brightly, then poured out of the bottle like liquid fire, spreading across the marble floor. The crowd gasped as the light formed a glowing trail, mapping Ekenna's journey from the humble village to the palace. The light showed him selling his tools, laughing hollowly. It showed him walking through the forest of lost vows, his face empty. It showed him standing beside Chiamaka, his eyes clouded and distant. And then the light moved to the necklace around Chiamaka's neck. It flared brightly, connecting the spell to her. The king's eyes narrowed. What is this? Chiamaka stumbled back, her hand covering the necklace. It is a lie, a trick! But the light did not lie. It showed the truth plainly. Ekenna's soul was trapped, anchored to the necklace, controlled by Chiamaka's will. The crowd began to murmur, their voices rising with anger and shock. Adanna turned to the king. This necklace is the source of the glamour spell. Break it and Ekenna will be free. Chiamaka's face twisted with panic. No, you cannot. It is mine. She backed away, desperate, cornered. Adanna remembered the cook's words, Chiamaka's fear of mirrors, her refusal to look at her own reflection, and suddenly Adanna understood. Chiamaka feared seeing the truth of who she really was. Adanna reached into her dress and pulled out a small polished shield she had taken from the palace armory. She threw it at Chiamaka's feet. The shield clattered across the marble floor, its surface reflecting the light of the chandelier. Chiamaka froze, her eyes wide with terror. No, she whispered. No, no, no! But she could not look away. The shield lay at her feet, and in its polished surface she saw herself. Not the beautiful, powerful woman she pretended to be, but the truth. A woman twisted by envy, hollowed out by greed, consumed by her own bitterness. The reflection showed her true self, and it was ugly. Chiamaka screamed. The necklace around her neck flared wildly, its light flickering and stuttering. The glamour spell, fed by Chiamaka's confidence and pride, could not survive this moment of self-realization. The spell turned on itself, unraveling, collapsing. The necklace cracked, then it shattered. Emerald light exploded through the throne room, and Ekenna gasped, his eyes clearing. Ekenna fell to his knees, his body shaking violently as the spell broke. The fog lifted from his mind, and for the first time in months, he could see clearly. He looked around the throne room, confused and horrified. Then his eyes found Adanna. "Adanna," he whispered, his voice breaking. Tears streamed down his face. "What have I done?" Adanna ran to him, dropping to her knees beside him, holding him tightly. "You were trapped," she said, her own tears falling. "It was not your fault." Ekenna sobbed into her shoulder, clinging to him like a man drowning. "I remember everything. I felt it all, but I could not stop it. I could not break free." Adanna held him close, her heart breaking and healing at the same time. Behind them, Chiamaka was on the ground, her hands clutching the broken pieces of the necklace, her face twisted with rage and despair. The king stood from his throne, his expression cold and furious. "Chiamaka, daughter of the merchant, you have committed a grievous crime. You have stolen a man's soul, defiled sacred bonds, and dishonored this court. You will be punished." The king's judgment was swift and absolute. Chiamaka's wealth was stripped from her, her family's merchant business was seized, and she herself was banished to the dusty outskirts of the kingdom, far from the palace luxury she had coveted so desperately. Her punishment was a life of manual labor, working the dry fields, her hands that once wore jewels, now calloused and cracked. As the guards dragged her away, Chiamaka screamed and cursed. "You will regret this! You will all suffer for what you have done to me!" But her curses fell on deaf ears. The crowd watched her go, some with pity, most with grim satisfaction. This was poetic justice. The woman who stole everything through greed and envy now had nothing. The woman who valued wealth above all else now owned only dust and shame. Adanna watched Chiamaka disappear through the palace gates, and she felt no anger, no triumph, only sadness. Chiamaka had destroyed herself. Her envy had been her own downfall. Adanna turned back to Ekenna, who was still on his knees, his face buried in his hands. This was not over yet. He was trapped, but he was not whole. Ekenna stood slowly, his legs unsteady. The crowd watched him, waiting. He did not run to Adanna. He did not beg for forgiveness. Instead, he turned to face the king and the entire court. His voice was hoarse but clear. I am free from the spell, but I am not free from my own weakness. He looked at Adanna, his eyes filled with shame. I was proud, I was vain, I wanted more than I had. And that weakness, that crack in my soul, is what allowed Chiamaka to control me. If I had been content, if I had been grateful, if I had truly valued what I already possessed, the spell would never have worked. The crowd murmured. Ekenna continued. I do not deserve forgiveness. I do not deserve the love I threw away, but I will spend the rest of my life earning it back, not with gold or promises, but with honesty and humility. He turned to Adanna and knelt before her. Adanna, you saved me when I did not deserve saving. You fought for me when I had abandoned you. I cannot undo what I have done, but I swear on my life I will become the man you believed I could be. Adanna looked down at him, her heart full. She reached out her hand and helped him stand. Then let us start again, together. The king, impressed by Adanna's courage and wisdom, rewarded them generously. He gave them land, resources, and his blessing. But Adanna and Ekenna did not use the reward for themselves. They returned to their village and used the king's gift to build something greater. They started a foundation for the poor, a place where those who had nothing could find help, hope, and dignity. They built homes for widows, schools for children, and workshops for young people to learn trades. Ekenna worked alongside the villagers, his hands once again in the soil, his pride replaced by humility. Adanna became a leader, respected and loved, teaching the young women that true power comes from courage and self-respect. The perfume bottle, now empty of magic, sat on a small shelf in their home. The scent of sandalwood had faded completely, no longer needed. The magic was gone, but the lesson remained. As the seasons passed, their love grew stronger, rooted not in enchantment or illusion, but in truth, forgiveness, and the hard, honest work of building a life together. The village prospered, and Adanna and Ekenna, once broken by betrayal, were now whole, stronger than they had ever been before. Years later, on a warm evening under the same baobab tree where they had once made their vows, Adanna and Ekenna sat together, watching the sunset. Their children played nearby, laughing and chasing fireflies. Adanna held Ekenna's hand, her heart at peace. Do you ever think about what happened? Ekenna asked quietly. Adanna smiled. Every day, but not with anger, with gratitude. Ekenna looked at her surprised. Gratitude? She nodded. Chiamaka's spell showed us the truth.
It showed me my own strength. It showed you your weakness. And it taught us both that real love is not about perfection. It is about facing your flaws and choosing to grow. Ekenna squeezed her hand, his eyes filled with love and respect. You are wiser than any book, Adanna. She laughed softly. Mama Azuka would say the same. As the moon rose, casting silver light over the village, Adanna turned to you, the listener, and asked a question. What weakness in your own heart might an envious person use against you? What crack in your soul could let darkness in? Think on this, because the only way to protect yourself from such spells is to know yourself completely. Face your shadows, embrace your flaws, and never forget that true power comes not from hiding your darkness, but from accepting it, learning from it, and growing beyond it. This is the lesson of the witch of the white gown. This is the wisdom of the perfume compass. Share your lesson with someone who needs to hear it.